Next up, we will have a very interesting topic, researching and protecting wilderness in times of conflict and pandemics by Professor Mazin Qumsiyeh, a researcher at Bethlehem University. So I think, Mazin, you are already with us.
Yes, thank you.
Welcome.
I really appreciate it, and I hope everybody can see my screen.
Yes, it looks good.
Good.
You can also enable your video if you would like.
Well, here, it should be here. I can't enable my video for some reason. Here, okay. Start my video, okay. Sorry about that. You can see me now.
Yes, we can see you and your presentation as well.
All right. I'm going to try and be very quick and hopefully leave some time for question and answers. If you want something more specific, I'm happy to address it. But basically, I'm in the Fertile Crescent. Palestine is part of the Fertile Crescent where humans first developed agriculture, and Jericho is the oldest continuously inhabited town on earth. This is also a very important geographically, geologically, as you know, it's like a bottleneck. Actually, humans migrated to Europe and the rest of the world through Palestine. So I say jokingly that you are all Palestinians, unless you are in Africa. But anyways, also birds migrate from as far as Sweden, north and Norway, through Palestine to Africa. So we're really lucky in being in this geographic area. We do have a political situation, which I won't get into. Basically, just to tell you, the Palestinians are squeezed into these cantons that you see in the right side map, similar to what Native Americans have been squeezed into and what South Africans have been squeezed into during the time of apartheid as Bantustans. This is settler colonialism, which does have environmental impact. For example, basically that the European colonizers in North America killed 2 million buffaloes and destroyed a lot of the landscape and the way of life of people in that area. This is also happening here. Of course, there is destruction of lives and livelihood and also of nature. As you see here, as Palestinians, native trees and everything is uprooted to create a new reality. Also, mega projects had impacted our environment. For example, diversion of the water of the Jordan Valley from Lake Tiberias in the north to the west by the new state of Israel in 1948 resulted in drying up of the Jordan Valley and the shrinking of the Dead Sea. And now they are building a canal that will connect the Red Sea to the Dead Sea with desalination plants, basically dumping the sludge into the Dead Sea to replenish the Dead Sea, if you want. But this will have significant environmental impact on Wadi Araba areas between Jordan and Israeli areas. There's also the colonial settlements like this one built on forested areas that, as you see in the upper picture, what it looked like in 1997 and what it looked like today at the bottom. And we published papers like on decline in vertebrate biodiversity in Bethlehem as a result of this settlement, which is just across the valley. I can see it actually from here as I speak to you. We also had the COVID-19 here in Palestine, like everywhere in the world. That started actually March 4th as the first case from some tourists. And then we got the second wave and a third wave. And now we may be also coming to the fourth wave. And it's, of course, has a lot of impact on biodiversity. I actually just submitted a paper with the title you see below, Impact of COVID-19 Pandemic on Biodiversity Conservation in Palestine, where we looked at the predicted impact based on earlier studies and what is actually happening here. It was actually the results were kind of frustrating, because we had impacted that we had thought that the reduction in movement and all of this stuff would be positive for the environment, the lockdown and all of this stuff. It turned out that the lockdown in an area like ours, which the inhabited areas are close to green areas, resulted in more people going to the green areas and destroying habitats, increasing solid waste dumping and liquid waste dumping from homes, even as they hang around the houses with nothing to do but eat and drink, so to speak. So it was kind of unexpected that it's COVID-19 was not actually good for the environment in Palestine. It was negative. Now, this is kind of a brief description of the problems. My background is medical genetics. I want to talk more about the solutions. In medical genetics, we say, that's a diagnosis. Then you have to do prognosis and therapy. And therapy is important. So, so we started an institute here called the Palestine Institute for Biodiversity and Sustainability. We started it in 2014, and we opened the Museum of Natural History, first one here, in April 2017, and we opened the playgrounds and botanical gardens, and we had the community garden. We have other things. Our mission, basically, our vision is sustainable human and natural community, and our mission focuses on research, education, and conservation. Our motto is respect first for ourselves as native indigenous people. We can change our own circumstances. Mental colonization is more dangerous than physical colonization. And second, respect for others. And third, the respect for nature. And this is in line, of course, with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Everything we do here is in line with those. And the native people here have a lot of wisdom. We learned from our ancestors, from my parents and grandparents. We learned a lot about how we manage our environment. They didn't use pesticides or insecticides. They didn't generate solid waste, things like that. So our emphasis on using cultural heritage and native knowledge and transferring it to others, basically, to ensure that we have sustainable human and natural communities. For example, we did a project with the British Council that had to do with collecting tangible and intangible cultural heritage related to nature and agriculture and disseminating it to people. And this work charms basically in getting people back to agriculture. And this project was done about a year and a half, or finished about a year and a half ago. And when the COVID-19 came, actually, it was very useful, since people quickly went to more agriculture in their yards and in other places, in their even vertical gardening on their walls, and gardening on their ceilings and stuff, from things that we have taught them that our ancestors did. Our Museum of Natural History also acts as an educational tool for children. For example, when we bring children as young as 5 and 6 years old, you can see here, they learn by touching, feeling. There's a Chinese saying, I hear and I forget, I see and I remember, I do and I understand. So we want them to do things by their hands. And so we also grow our own vegetables here with volunteer efforts from the local community and also international volunteers. We constructed hydroponics and aquaponics systems, and we have a community garden. And we study our nature, our wildlife. This some of the papers that we published on various things. And Basically, our projects are all done in collaboration with other groups and other entities. We started this museum with our own internal funding. Actually, my wife and I donated $250,000 to Bethlehem University to start this project of an Institute for Biodiversity and Sustainability. And then we started getting some other funding. We now have, for example, EU funding and Darwin Initiative. National Geographic gave the first grant to Palestine for us. We accomplished a lot. We published a lot. For example, we now publish 1 or 2 papers a month. And you know, we work on climate change, for example, with the Zoe International and the Zoe Environment Network and Geneva, City of Geneva. We did a project that relates to building culturally sensitive educational modules for climate change that encourage people to recycle and reduce use and even eliminate use of plastics and others, and then to use alternative energy and to grow their own vegetables, increase green areas, etc. We do a lot of educational programs and on biodiversity, recycling, environmental issues, very successful. We have a science cafe basically that we function, and we have a system here with an ecosystem with water ponds where children and others come and learn on how ecosystems function. These are just some pictures. We're members of the Botanic Gardens Conservation International. In our botanic garden, we have actually 388 species, and BGCI just gave species of plants, including rare plants. And BGCI just gave us some money to preserve the orchids of Palestine, which are endangered in our garden. We have international volunteers and local volunteers, and we have fun, and we invite you, if you like, to come and volunteer with these people and enjoy yourself. This is a map of the garden, etc. We do have global impact. Actually, our experience was sought already by 5 countries that asked us, institutes and even government agencies in these 5 countries have asked us to help basically give them advice on doing something similar in their countries, in their developing countries. We also published our experiences in journals. For example, you can see in the International Journal of Environmental Studies, role of museums and botanical gardens and ecosystem services in developing countries. We can, all of these things, by the way, are found on our website, so you can download our papers, etc. Our website is palestinenature.org, which you see here. We started a new group called Palestine Action for the Planet. This is not an NGO or part of Bethlehem University. This is a network of people interested in environmental issues. And we're part of Extinction Rebellion and others that we work with groups like Greenpeace and other groups. This is what the museum will look like when I have enough money to build the actual museum. Now it's in a few rooms, very limited space and very limited support. This is all I thought I would present fairly quickly, and I'm happy to address, and sorry I went rather quick, but I wanted to cover different issues and then see what the audience might be interested in to address if you want to ask any questions.
Thank you very much. It was a very, very interesting presentation. So if I understood correctly, you're looking for volunteers for the university or for the museum?
Well, I mean, we are part of the university, yes. So we have an institute which includes a botanical garden, the community garden, the children exploration playground, the Museum of Natural History, including an ethnography, cultural heritage section, which has a lot of tangible items of agriculture and things like that, going back to our Canaanitic ancestors. So we have a lot of sections within this institute if people want to volunteer, but this institute is part of Bethlehem University, and so we welcome the volunteers to come here. And of course, if they want to volunteer at other sections of the university, they're welcome to, like the library or anything else. But I'll also leave my email in the chat.
Yes.
I don't know if it's possible to put in the chat for everybody, but maybe, yeah. Well,
Yeah,
I can do it to all panelists. And then
panelists and attendees. Yeah, that would be very welcome. I think many people would be interested to hear more about the opportunities. So I'm wondering, what are really the current main issues or main questions about biodiversity protection in Palestine?
Well, I mean, our main challenges are, of course, similar to other challenges around the world, like climate change and human reproduction and destruction of habitats, etc. But you add to that, of course, in our case, the colonization. Israel was created on the ruins of Palestine. There are 13 million Palestinians in the world. 7.5 million of us are refugees or displaced people. And even here in Bethlehem, there are 3 refugee camps, which add to the pressure of the population density on the nature of the area of Bethlehem district. We have a protected area, for example, called Al-Makhrur here, where we have an EU project, very good project actually. We're working with 80 farmers to increase their food sovereignty. I don't use the term, by the way, food security that the Europeans like. I like food sovereignty more. But anyways, to increase their food sovereignty, ability to grow their own food and feed themselves and control their own destiny for 4 villages. And we have 80 farmers, 20 in each village that we're working on with them to increase their permaculture, going back to traditional methods of agriculture and so forth. The obstacles that face us, of course, is colonization that prevents us even from simple things like freedom of movement, freedom to import things that we need for our biodiversity conservation, even books, even supplies, chemicals, equipment. It's very, very difficult. There's a lot of obstacles to us to survive here because of the way the occupation, colonization by the state of Israel of the Palestinian areas have developed. They expand settlements, for example. They dump toxic waste from the industrial settlements. Some of my master students studied the effect of this toxic waste from the industrial settlements, not just the effect on humans, but the effect on nature also. And they have very damaging industries that they built near Palestinian areas, whether natural areas or populated Palestinian native areas.
Yeah, thank you for that. There is another question in the Q&A box, basically linked to what you've already described. So are there any interesting examples, initiatives where people are protecting nature as well as their livelihoods in Palestine?
Yeah, I mean, despite all these obstacles, as I tell my students, and by the way, most of them are female, 90%, wow. Sometimes 95% of my classes are female. I tell them that the main obstacle is up here in our head. If we liberate our minds, we can liberate our bodies. So we have to think innovatively and do things out of, I tell them not even to think so-called outside the box, but it's an imaginary box. Just imagine there is no box actually, and there is no box. you can do anything you want to, despite all these obstacles, despite all of these challenges. The second point I would make to them is that this is an existential struggle for both indigenous people and the indigenous animals and plants that share this planet with us. So it's an existential struggle. You know that 80% of the biodiversity-rich areas occur next to the native people, or in areas of native people like ours. And so, so it's very important, and yet, you know, you see the elites of the world that are controlling our lives and trying to prevent us even from preserving our traditional modes, which are more eco-friendly than the new agriculture, monoculture, pesticides, insecticides, things like that. So I would say there's a lot to be done. And we have innovations here. I mean, I have undergraduate students who are able to publish research papers, you know, in first, second year in college. I have innovations in terms of like showing people how to grow vegetables on their gardens on the sides of their walls. When they're in the refugee camp, for example, they don't have gardens, but they do have walls and ceilings, and they can grow things there. So I think we can show them certain things by examples found in our 12 dunam, about 4-acre area here on the, which is part of Bethlehem University, as I said. And they learn to do amazing things, and it's really not, we don't teach them, we just let them learn, and student-centered learning and innovation from their part, you know. We just create, I say we create an environment, just like we create an environment for seeds to grow. We create an environment here for people to grow. And they have within themselves the ability to grow.
It is connecting back to what we've heard about the Wilderness Leadership School in South Africa, how it is so important for people, the sense of co-creating, for the sense of their own autonomy, to be able to be responsible for something. So you also share this viewpoint.
Right, exactly. I think we really, I mean, this COVID-19 pandemic should have woken up the world, because we cannot go back to what we were doing before this COVID, before this pandemic. We really have to think of a new structure of society, new systems. And what we were doing, and then now people are coming to us and saying, hey, you know, what you showed us is precisely what we need now. And so there's more and more need for us, for people like us. I'm sure the audience, I mean, I haven't met people here, but from the list of speakers and the interests of and the subject, I mean, all of us are doing things, or were doing things, that now the rest of our communities are coming back to us and saying, hey, you know, you were right, let's work together, you know, because they were shocked by the COVID-19 that devastated the idea that you can have a consumerist economic system the way it was structured in the past.
Yeah. Yeah, you actually met somebody from here, from the attendees. There is a comment in the chat box about from Duncan Reevy, if I understand correctly, whether, yeah, so apparently he loved your talk, and it's always triggering so many ideas what you're doing. And he says that he needs his university students to be challenged by unfamiliar, complicated situations, so they can learn to ask better questions. So maybe one day we can visit.
Yeah, I don't know. Francis, can you email me privately and we can continue? We can discuss about how we can get your university students to come here or help us from where they are. They don't even have to come here. They can work with us on research projects, on education projects, on media, on communication, on visibility issues, even from where they are. So it would be nice.
Yes, so this email contact is established. Thank you, Mazin. We hope to see you on our next year's International Wilderness Week.